Hi, it's David Kieve, President of EDF Action. I am so excited for this evening's program, this afternoon's program. If you're on the West Coast, I'm excited to welcome one of my very favorite people, Adam Met, for an important discussion. Before we get into it, though, I want to share that we're living in really challenging times, and especially for all of us who care about climate and clean energy. The House of Representatives has recently passed President Trump's quote unquote big beautiful bill. And unfortunately, it's more of a big ugly mess than a big beautiful bill. It aims to wipe out, to render functionally inaccessible, basically any tax credit that benefits clean energy. It wipes them out in spite of the fact that they have already created tens of thousands of jobs, and they're poised to create hundreds of thousands, if not even millions of jobs all across this country. And it wipes them out in spite of the fact that they have are poised to save ratepayers, consumers, lots and lots of money on their energy bill and on their overall energy costs. We're disappointed about this action in the House of Representatives. We're not dismayed. We're going to continue to fight and do everything that we possibly can to make sure that we live up to and present the clean energy future that we want and that we hope to see soon. But that having been said, and that darkness acknowledged, at the end of this discussion, we're going to ask you to do something to take action to help to avert it, to weigh in directly with your United States senators, because the bill has now moved on to the Senate. But as of right now, because we've got about 15 minutes for this discussion before we move on to something else, I want to welcome on one of my dear friends and one of my favorite people on the planet. Can we please bring Adam up onto the screen? There he is. I'll try to be quick, but all that you've accomplished makes it really hard to do this. Adam Met, in addition to being one of my favorite people, has a doctorate in international human rights and sustainable development. He's the co-founder and executive director of a really serious nonprofit that works on climate issues called Planet Reimagined. He's the bassist in a multi-platinum band called AJR that maybe you've heard of, and if you haven't, you should. He's also a board member of the Environmental Defense Fund, and someone who makes all of us on the staff at EDF and EDF Action and his peers on the board better for his participation. As of today, he has added another title to his illustrious resume. He is now a published author of a book called Amplify, which seeks to teach all of us how to be better communicators on climate based on what he's learned from putting into practice over the course of his night job with AJR, trying to get music-going fans to take action on the things that we all care about. And I've read it. I love it. We all have a lot to learn from this book. As of next week, or like a week and a half from now, I don't know when it comes out, my hope is that we'll add Adam to one more list. There'll be another thing that I'll have to say in this long windup of him, and that's best-selling New York Times author. So do what you can. Hear this talk. This is like a book group in reverse. We're going to talk about a book that none of you have read yet. Then hopefully you're going to go out and buy it. And then maybe we'll come back in a month or two and we can chat about what you've learned together as an EDF Action community. But Adam, with that embarrassingly long wind up, the floor is yours. We're so honored that you're here on the first day that Amplify is on sale. What do you want to tell our EDF Action members about this book that you've poured your heart and soul into?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that I appreciate that introduction, but honestly, the thing that I'm most proud of from everything you listed is the fact that you called me a friend. And I thought that was very nice that you started with that. So thank you, David. This is a project that I've been working on for a very long time because as a musician, I've spent so much time playing in front of fans. We started out playing in Washington Square Park. Those were our first gigs. And from there, we played for 10 people, 20 people, 50 people, a couple thousand. And last summer, we sold out 2 nights at Madison Square Garden, in addition to arenas across the country. And my work in the band has really been about how to effectively grow the fan base. My brothers write the music and produce the music, and I really focus on what does it take to grow this fan base. So I've been looking at strategies in the music industry for almost 2 decades now. And every time I came across a new strategy or developed a new strategy, I started to think about how we can use those fan building tactics in other places, such as in building movements. Now, this book touches on a variety of different movements, but because my area of focus is climate change, pretty much every chapter has a way to apply a very sticky tactic from the music industry to climate. And we talk about everything from how people can find their roles really effectively, to storytelling, to building a bigger tent, to how we can use gamification or the digital space, or how to break rules. All of these strategies that the music industry uses are creative and really outside the box. And in order to move our climate movement forward, because I mean, we really are in a stuck place. We are kind of rudderless, especially after the last handful of months, that we are looking for new strategies, new ways to re-engage people in this movement. And my whole thought process behind the book is, let's use what music does best in order to rebuild and create new strategies for the climate movement.
Excellent. And at the risk of putting you on the spot, if people hear all that you've accomplished and your lengthy resume, I'm a little worried that they might think, oh, well, Adam can do this because he's exceptional. What can I do? But this book is very much pointed at our audience, at regular folks who want to take action, applying some of what you've learned. Can you talk directly to someone who, like me, doesn't view themselves in any way, shape, or form as exceptional, and say, like, you can do this, David?
Okay, everybody on this StreamYard knows that David Kieve is exceptional. He is an exceptional person. He's the president of EDF Action. He has done incredible work. David and I met when he was at the White House, and even like the work he did there was incredible. So David is an exceptional person. So let's put that to the side. But for the people who have not worked in climate, not spent their time studying it, engaging at a deep level, there are so many ways that you can get involved. And I'm not talking about switching the kind of straw you're using, or maybe going vegan or pledging to go vegan 1 meal a week. I'm talking about the really concrete civic and political action. And I'll talk about it in 2 different ways. One is climate change as a phrase is a newer phrase, right? We used to use the phrase global warming. That was the phrase that we used to talk about what's going on with our planet getting hotter. When I was in undergrad, I studied with a professor named Wally Broker. He was the person who coined the phrase global warming, and he popularized it too, and especially in the scientific literature. Climate change, now we've reached this precipice where the phrase is too existential. It's too far away. What does 1.5 degrees even mean? When I was out on the road, and David was there too for a good chunk of it, volunteering for the Harris campaign, I visited a whole bunch of college campuses, from Georgia to North Carolina to Michigan, Wisconsin to Pennsylvania. And every time I talked about climate change, people's eyes would glaze over. They really don't know what it is or how they can engage. But when I started to talk about the food that's on their plate, or how they got from place to place, or jobs, or the economy, all of those things were sticky and concrete and really personal. So the next kind of step after making that argument, the next kind of step is, okay, once we get to the kind of issues that people can wrap their mind around and care about, how do we get people to take action on them? We've done a lot of work, and when I say we, Planet Reimagine, my organization, really focuses on how we can dive deep into the research side and then immediately translate them to actions, so ways for people to engage. We did a lot of studies to understand how people can engage, in particular at the local level. And a lot of people who are on this call, I'm sure, know this, but the people who you vote for at the local level have so much say over your life, and your vote at the local level is so much more powerful than you voting for president. Elections happen all the time. David and I were just talking that there's a primary race in New York City. There are elections for city council members, community board members, legislators, state senators. Most people don't know who those people are who represent them. But those are the people who decide where the next petrochemical plant is being built, what the local transportation system looks like, how waste is collected. Those are all climate issues, but we don't need to frame them as climate issues. The way that people can get engaged, the number one thing that I say now is everyone should look up when their next local election is. It'll take 2 seconds to find it on Google when your next local election is, because there are hundreds of them happening around the country. And they're not just elected officials on the ballot, but there are also policies on the ballot. That's where we have so much power. That's where we can rack up all of these wins at the state and local level. And all it takes is you going to a place to vote. You're going to do the couple minutes of research to figure out when the next local election is, what the issue is that you care about and what's on the ballot, and making the plan to go and vote. It happens a lot more often than every 4 years. I'm not asking you at this moment to donate anything to a cause. I'm not asking you to go to a beach cleanup. I'm not asking you to do anything else except to go and vote in the next local election. That's the best on-ramp to activism.
I'm asking you to do something. Go and buy Adam's book and read it. I think it will demystify a lot of things. One of the things that I think we have in common, and it shines through in the pages of this book, is that when you show up, people notice and they remember, and it matters to them. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as one of the sort of takeaways of the book and of your life's journey? I mean, one of the most interesting points in here, and the intro is written by Maxwell Frost, who's probably proudly counts himself one of the most progressive members of Congress, but you had an opportunity to engage a little bit with Glenn Beck, who is at the other end of the political spectrum, and you made time to go to his house, and you found that you had common ground with someone with whom you expected to have very little. Like, do you want to talk a little bit about how much showing up matters? Because our audience, the folks who are here today, they've showed up for this chat. They also show up for our other activities. Like, affirm for them what you've learned, that their presence makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll tell you the Glenn Beck story because it's a fun one. A handful of years ago, we were doing a show in Dallas, Texas. And after the show, I get off stage and I see a tweet. And the tweet is from Glenn Beck. And I'm sure all of you know who Glenn Beck is, kind of the precursor to Tucker Carlson, if you don't know. A conservative firebrand, Fox News host. And he really converted a lot of people with his rhetoric to conservative values. And so when he tweeted about coming to our show, he said, I'm at the AJR show. I love their lyrics. I love their music. I love what they do on stage. But most of all, I love how they helped me connect with my son through their music. And I said, okay, wait a second. There's something there that I want to explore. Yes, great that he's a fan. I was a little surprised because a lot of our music has very kind of liberal leaning lyrics about, immigration and having a female president, LGBTQ rights, quinoa. That seems like a pretty liberal thing. But when we kind of saw this tweet, it made me want to dive a little bit deeper. So for the book, I wrote to Glenn and I said, look, thank you so much for tweeting. I'd love to come interview you for this book I'm working on. And he knew about the subject of the book and he said, yes, anyway. Went to Texas, sat down with him for 4 hours. And my goal of this 4-hour conversation was to find one thing that we agreed on in the climate space. One thing. It took 4 hours to get there. We talked about family, we talked about religion, we talked about happiness, we talked about history, we talked about so many different things. And finally, we got to talking about climate, and I jumped around a lot, kind of tried to tease out his different viewpoints. But ultimately, the thing that we agreed on was the fact that he said, I have a house and it was in another state. It wasn't in Texas. And he says, I use natural gas to power the state. Isn't that great? And I said, what makes you think that's great? And he said, well, it's natural. I said, who told you that it's natural? And he said, well, it's called natural gas. And I said, what if I told you that is a complete misunderstanding, that natural gas is methane, and it actually is more than 80 times more powerful than carbon dioxide in terms of warming the planet? And he said, well, everybody knows that it's natural. And I said, okay, how about this? Natural gas, methane, is leaking out of pipelines on their way to people's houses, to power businesses, etc. Could we get on the same page about plugging the leaks in natural gas pipelines? And he said, that sounds great. And I said, would you be willing to share that? Can I share that publicly in the book, that you believe that we should be plugging the leaks in natural gas pipelines? And he said, absolutely. So it took 4 hours to get there. We talked about a lot of different climate issues. But when you are there, listening to somebody, hearing their points of view, connecting with them, I think that finding that common ground is almost inevitable. Sure, you're going to go through many topics that you disagree with them on, but you can't let those be the sticking points for you to find that common ground. Because honestly, and David, you know this, EDF knows this better than anyone, plugging leaks in methane pipelines can have a huge impact in reducing warming.
That's terrific. But also, like, kudos to you. Like, a lot of people would see Glenn Beck's tweet and say, huh, that's weird, and then just move on and not think more about it. You said this is an opportunity to find some common ground with somebody with whom I probably have very little, and to work towards it. And to channel Fred Krupp, EDF's longtime president, he's talked internally to our staff, he's talked externally. We're going to talk with people with whom we don't agree, because that's the only way that we make progress. We're going to assume good faith on their part that they want to reach some place of consensus with us. But the one thing we're not going to sacrifice on is our own principles. Like, you can talk to people with whom you disagree without selling out. It doesn't make you a sellout to talk to somebody like Glenn Beck, and you can still have a nice conversation with somebody like our young Congressman Maxwell Frost, for instance.
Exactly.
I know you've got to go in like just a second. I've not seen any questions from our audience in the chat. I want to just call out, if you've got a question and you can type really quickly, put it in, and we'll try to ask it. But Adam, this is a spectacular achievement, this book. I think you've lifted my spirits just in this conversation. You do it to everyone around you. And while I'm waiting for an audience question, one observation is you're among the most emotionally honest people that I've ever met. And as I've read this book, I thought to myself, oh yeah, Adam told me that. And then I thought, wait, did he, or did I just imagine that he did? Like, you are an open book in terms of what motivates you, how you're feeling about things, how progress is able to be made. And it's really, really great. Elaine Weir asked what the title of the book is. I know you've got a hard out, so I'll let you answer that and then plug it for yourself for 20 seconds and then hit the road. And we'll ask folks here, including my friend Adam Sweeney. Oh, he says, once you've voted, what do you think comes next? Voting is huge, probably our biggest climate actions. I mean, my view is engaging with the people who you've worked to help to elect. But Adam, take Adam's question and then hit the road, because you're really, really kind to squeeze us in.
No, of course. So that's a fantastic question. The on-ramp for voting is definitely the first step for any new people. But once you are a person who has gone to vote, the most impactful actions are civic and political. So you going to community board meetings, you working with your network of people, everyone is a micro-influencer in their own right. Everyone has family and friends that they can convince to go take these kinds of actions. Things like petitions work. We've done this work on our tours. We've gotten thousands of signatures on different petitions and have actually had real impact. We've gotten people to phone bank on our tour, calling their representatives, especially at the local level. That has real impact. Like David said at the beginning, when you show up, that's when the real magic happens. And David, I can't thank you enough for this conversation. The book is called Amplify, and it is out today. I've been working on this for so long, and it really is surreal. It doesn't feel like it's out in the world, but thank you all for listening, and I hope you get a chance to take a look at the book. I also recorded an audiobook version of it, which was incredibly fun, and a lot of the interviews that are in the book, the people who were interviewed in the book actually read their own pieces of it. So Christiana Figueres is in it, and a whole bunch of other amazing people.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight. In the middle of the big day in your life, the launch of this new book, and in the launch of a book tour. It's in New York today. It's coming to DC tomorrow. It's in Salt Lake City soon. It's everywhere where our audience is, in major cities where they might congregate. You'll have a chance to go out and see Adam in person. We'll drop a link to where to go to the book events in the chat as well. But good luck with the book tour. I'm excited to see you on the other side of it. And thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thank you, David. I'll see you very soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Elani asks, what if your Congress people are awful and no matter how much you contact them, you know they're going to be against everything? NC, does NC might mean you might be living in North Carolina? I'm just guessing. Talk to your mayor, talk to your county commissioner, talk to your governor, talk to your attorney general, who EDF Action Votes was proud to support in this last election. Ask them what they can do, and continue to make progress where you can. I've never asked anybody. We've talked about plugging methane leaks. I wouldn't ask anyone to drill in a dry well. That wouldn't make any sense. But showing up matters. And I believe, Alani, that we live in a time of such deep cynicism about our politics that a lot of the people who tune out and don't participate, that's a rational choice for them to make. But that further empowers the people who do raise their voice. So it's not just that you've got one vote and it counts. Your voice matters more than all of the people who are choosing not to use theirs. So don't give away your voice. Don't give away your power. With that, because we're 25 minutes in, welcome my colleague, Alex Ross, who's going to encourage each of you to use your power and your voice to contact your United States senators. This lousy bill, this awful mess, the big, beautiful bill that President Trump keeps talking about that would strip out any sort of tax credit for clean energy, has passed the House. It is now in the U.S. Senate. Your senators need to hear from you, and we're going to help you do that now. So, Alex, please join us.
Thank you so much, David. Really great conversation with Adam. I'm really excited to read the book. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the call, right? The House passed this terrible, awful budget. I can't call it big or beautiful because there's nothing beautiful about it. And it now heads to the Senate, where they will deliberate over a lot of different pieces of it. Most importantly, our clean energy tax incentives that we care so deeply about that help propel our economy forward. And luckily, even though it is a pretty slim margin in the Senate, there are a handful of senators who oppose the bill as it stands and are ready to vote against it. And so I think there's a good chance now more than ever that your senators need to hear from you about how you feel about this bill, because every vote is going to really count at the very bottom, at the very end of it. And so we have an action alert for you, so you can send a message directly to your senators in opposition to this bill. And I will share that link in the chat, and we'll take a second to do that right now. Now, also, while we're at it, I'll pull it up here on screen for folks because I think the link may not show up everywhere. David, any final comments to say on this, on the reconciliation package?
It's lousy. I wrote about this last week, but I've been talking a lot about a fairly weedy issue, which is green hydrogen, which is produced using clean energy. The House zeroed out tax credits for green hydrogen, but left in place tax credits for so-called blue hydrogen, which is made as a byproduct of the methane extraction process and methane refining process, the so-called natural gas that Adam was talking about a few minutes ago. Blue hydrogen is better for the planet if you can capture the carbon that it would otherwise be emitting into the atmosphere. That they left in place tax credits to support blue hydrogen, but took out the ones for green hydrogen is really important because that, I think, gives the big lie to the notion that we don't need tax credits for wind and solar anymore because those are quote unquote mature industries. Because green hydrogen is very much a nascent industry that has enormous promise, particularly in hard to abate sectors of our economy, like reducing industrial emissions. Gosh, Barbara, thank you so much for sending your message in Michigan. Abby, thank you for contacting your senators in California. That's awesome news. But the whole point of what's happened in the House is to stifle clean energy investment and development, even if it will cost us jobs, will cost everyone higher energy bills, and have a deleterious impact on our public health, and also worsen the climate crisis and make us all more susceptible to extreme weather events, which are all over the place. So, Jody, thank you for reaching out to Senator Young. Barbara, thank you for reaching out again in Michigan. Abby, thank you for reaching out in California. Thank you for telling us that you're reaching out, because appearing in these panel discussions, it's not like a regular Zoom where you could see everyone else's face. You're not sure if what you're saying has an impact. So your guys telling us that you're taking action, not just on behalf of EDF Action, but on behalf of yourselves and your neighbors and the people you love and care about in your communities, that matters tremendously. And I hope everyone will take some of their free time to read Adam's excellent book, and that it will inspire you as it's inspired me to do a little bit more and lift a little bit higher. So thank you all for joining us tonight. This has been super, super fun. I'm inspired by Adam, but I'm also inspired by each of you.
Thank you all. Good night.